Hey everyone, welcome to our last class. Thank you for joining me today. Um, Today we don't have too much to cover. I was going to give you a problem actually to work on in groups, and then we will um, take it up together. It's going to be what number? Problem 51. I don't think we've covered that one yet. It covers some of the scenarios we discussed at the end of class on Monday. So my goal for this class is to have you work on that in groups. We'll take it up together. We'll discuss it obviously, and then I'll take questions in regards to your exam um, that I will open this Sunday, and it'll be available till next Thursday. So I don't know the dates off the top of my head, but I'll post that information on Canvas um, once I finalize everything. But it should go live this Sunday, so just keep your eyes out for that. Before we get started, are there any questions, any comments from any of you? Everyone can hear me okay, hopefully. So like I said, here, I'm gonna split you up. Let's do 3 rooms. And I want you to work on problem 51. So problem 51, let me pull it up here. So Megan and Matthew are equal partners in the J&J partnership, a calendar year end entity. On January 1 of the current year, they decide to liquidate the partnership. Megan's basis in her partnership interest is 100,000 and Matthew's is 35,000. The two partners receive identical distributions, with each receiving the following assets. So we can see they receive cash, they receive inventory, and they receive land. So basically it goes through the process of what is the amount and character of Megan's recognized gain or loss, what's her basis in the distributed assets, and then the same process for Matthew. So I'll give you some time to do this. Is 15 minutes, I think that should be sufficient for this one. If you need more, obviously let me know. But let's start with that. So discuss it among your group, and then we will take it up. But are there any questions before I open up the breakout rooms? All right, let me do that. So you should have access. And then again, I'll have each group present something about this problem there. So feel free to join your rooms, and we will reconvene in about 15 minutes. So again, this one deals with both partner interests being liquidated here through distributions. Megan has a basis of 100,000. Matthew has basis of 35,000. The partners receive identical distributions as stated below there. Group one, so Amanda, Benjamin, Maxwell, and Ilami. I'll have you walk us through parts A and B since they're kind of connected to one another. So breakout room 3, you're off the hook here. I'm not gonna call on you. So you got lucky there. So group 1 or breakout room 1, part A asks, what is the amount and character of Megan's recognized gain or loss? So who wants to walk us through that calculation?
I can. So we had decided it was similar to problem 47 that we did last class, where basically that they get, or it's 0 because loss or gain is like allocated to the non-hot assets in the transaction.
Yep, that's correct for part A. So there's no gain or loss here. As you said, Maxwell, it's going to be allocated. In this case, there's only one non-hot asset, or one asset I think we agreed upon. In my notes, they refer to it as a cold asset. But, I guess it depends what geographic location they're living in. So part B, to fill group 1 there, what is Megan's basis in the distributed assets?
Let me share my screen.
Okay, let me stop sharing mine, I guess. Okay. You go ahead, Maxwell.
Okay, so we were not extremely confident in this calculation, but so we tried to do kind of what we did with 47 again. So we started with cash, which has the same initial and final basis as what was received, And then for the initial basis, we just did the tax basis for these two items of 5,500, which gives us a total of 35,500. Her basis in the partnership was 100,000, which left a $64,500 loss that needed to be allocated to the non-hot assets.
Yep.
And then we moved on to the adjusted basis, which I was trying to do the calculation where you do like the fair market value difference, which ultimately just made these be the fair market value.
Now I'll say your inventory isn't going to change. It should still be the 5,000.
Okay.
The land does you do write up the land because of the appreciation, since she has sufficient allocable basis. So you're correct there that the adjusted basis there for the land does get written up essentially, or stepped up to 1,000.
But not inventory?
Not the inventory, because remember that's a hot asset. So we don't.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So, and then that left us with a $64,000 loss allocated to the non-hot assets, and in this case, it was only land.
Yep.
So that all gets lumped into land, giving these as our final bases for the three.
Yep, that's correct. I mean, it looks very extreme or irregular, but it's correct. All of that allocable basis is allocated in this case to the land. So it shows, how unique and how odd maybe these rules are. So, and again, Megan, if she sells the land today, fair market value, then she would still be able to recognize that capital loss of 64,000. But it just so happens that it would only occur when she disposes of the land. But That's correct. Yep. Any questions from the other groups on that one? I know it looks odd, but it's the same process like we did last class. Tax carryover basis initially in all the distributed assets. Recognize any unrealized appreciation related to non-hot assets. And then if there's any basis left over to be allocated, it gets allocated to those non-hot assets like we saw in the example that Maxwell's group just went through. Group 2. So now we're looking at the same process, but for Matthew. So Matthew, the big difference between Megan and Matthew had basis of 35,000. So group 2, if someone wants to walk me through parts C and D there and what you got, please volunteer. Got real quiet there all of a sudden.
Who was in group 2?
Oh, that's a good question. Hold one second. Group 2, you were in it, Catherine, Susan, Tan, and Tyler.
We spent 14 minutes on 1 and 2,
Okay.
and then your pop-up came with 60 seconds, and then we did 3 and 4 in 60 seconds. So
that's fine. We can, if you get it right, that's great. But if not, we can kind of correct your errors and go from there. So just feel free to share what you have, and then we can kind of discuss it as a group.
okay.
Again, you're not graded here or anything, so
Yeah.
don't worry.
So we think his he doesn't recognize a gain or loss.
And you tend to see that's generally the case.
Mm-hmm.
The only scenario where that isn't the case is usually when it's only money being received and it's a different amount than the basis in the interest, in the partnership interest. That's usually the scenario where you would see a gain or loss recognized. Otherwise, it's usually not. So you're correct. There's no gain or loss recognized from Matthew's standpoint on this liquidating distribution. So part D then asks, what's his basis in the assets?
So and then part D, so the sum was the 35,500, which is greater than his basis of 35,000.
Yep.
So you have to decrease by 500, and you're decreasing the cold asset land to 0.
Yep, that's it. So this one is a little bit simpler than from Megan's standpoint. So what Tyler was saying, from Matthew's perspective, initially he'll have basis in each of the assets as listed here: the 30,000 in cash, 5,000 in inventory, 500 in land. But remember, his basis in the interest was 35,000. The basis of these assets is 35,500. So he has to reduce that 35,500 by 500, and that immediately goes to decreasing any non-hot asset, in this case, the land. So what that means is, at distribution, or after the distribution, Tyler's basis in each of these assets, it's going to be 30,000 in cash, 5,000 in inventory, and actually 0 in the land. So questions there, I guess.
Yeah, so why don't you write up the appreciable, or the appreciation of the land like you did in the first one?
In this case, because then his tax basis would be greater, or his basis in the distributed assets would end up being greater than what his interest was in the land. So in this case, what we're trying to do is we're trying to match it up. Because realistically, what should happen, he is receiving 35,500 for partnership interest of 35,000, right? So on paper, there should be a gain there. It just so happens that that gain gets deferred by the reduction in the land in that case. So when he disposes of the land, he will recognize that gain of, in this case, 1,000. All right. Questions, comments there? And again, it's a similar process that you did it for Megan. It just so happens you didn't have to go through all 3 steps in this case, because immediately that difference between outside and inside basis of the assets versus the partnership interest simply reduces the land by the $500 there.
What happens if the difference is more than the basis in the cold asset?
Then there's capital gain or loss recognized immediately.
Got it. Okay.
Can't reduce the other assets.
Got it. So if like the loss had been 700 in this case, like they would have taken a $200 capital loss
Immediately.
Okay.
Good job. Good job, team. Or good job, everyone there on that. Questions, comments on that? So I guess that's all the material for the course. So questions, comments on the exam. I have to edit the exam. So originally I had, I'm gonna look up here. Hopefully you can't see my screen right now, or else you'd see the exam. So originally I had 6 questions on the exam. I don't know if that'll be the same after I edit it, but it will still cover just chapters 9 and 10. And so I guess I'll open it up to questions in regards to the exam, or anything related to it.
I'm sorry, for problem 51 on D, the land basis was 0 then, or was it 500?
The land basis, or after, it should be 0.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Could we expect to see a problem like problem 51 on the exam?
Yeah, we covered it in class. Sorry, my mind was elsewhere. Yeah, we covered it in class, so you could definitely see something. Everything that we've covered, especially the problems we've gone over, I would expect to see exam questions similar to those, is my hint, I guess, for you.
So last week we did problem 30, or I'm sorry, not last week, Monday we did problem 47. Can we do C on that just to make sure?
47.
Yeah, 47C.
Did we not cover?
Well, we kind of ended right at that point.
Okay.
So we got like through a portion of it. You said, hey, finish that and we'll pick it up next week
Yeah.
or pick it up on Wednesday. Sorry.
All right. Sorry about that. Okay, let me
No, that's okay.
go to that. I think I still have the file open actually. So this one, right above. So we had started C. Oh, I guess we didn't finish.
Yeah.
That there. So let's quickly kind of review what we did. So again, Melissa, Nicole, and Ben are equal partners. Melissa decides she wants to exit the partnership and receives a proportionate distribution to liquidate her interests. No liabilities, and they hold the following assets as of January 1. So she gets we talked about she gets a third of the cash, third of the stock investment, third of the land. Her basis was 25,000. So we went through parts. Sorry, I'm gonna just format my screen here. That's better. So we went through parts A and B. Part A said, what is the amount and character of any gain or loss recognized? Again, since there's other things other than cash being distributed, there's going to be no gain or loss. Here, what is Melissa's basis in the distributed assets? We went through that calculation in that 3-step process. So the initial basis in what she receives a third of the cash, so 6,000, a third of the investment, so 2,500, and a third of the land, so 10,000. So that adds up to 18,500, but her basis was 25,000. So we have to allocate to the non-hot assets this excess basis you could think of for 6,500. And the first thing we do is we adjust the basis for any unrealized appreciation related to those room temp assets. So the stock investment, there's a total built-in gain here of $4,500. So 1,500 of that would be attributed to the property or the investment that Melissa received. So that's why we adjust the basis upward by 1,500. Similar logic with the land, total unrealized gain of 6,000. So 2,000 of that is attributed to Melissa. So we increase the basis by 12,000. And there's still 3,000 of allocable basis to the non-hot assets. So then of this 3,000, we prorate it to the non-hot assets based off of their fair market values at the time of distribution. So we did that calculation down here. Stock investment had fair market value of 12,000, land of 36,000. So a 3-to-1 or 1-to-3 ratio there. So we allocate this 3,000 in that same proportion. So that's how we ended up with these bases and that'd be the answer for part B. I'll just put that there. So before we get to C, any questions on A or B? So part C asks, what are the tax implications, amount and character of gain or loss and basis of assets to Melissa if her outside basis is 11,000 rather than the 25,000? So in this case, we're going about it the other way. Similar starting point. So the initial basis is 1/3 of each of the assets she received. So 6,000 for cash, 2,500 for stock, 10,000 for land. So her basis in those assets would be 18,500. Excuse me. Her inside basis, or outside basis, I should say, in her partnership interest was only, now we're assuming 11,000. So we have to do the opposite, and we would reduce the non-hot assets. In this case, the gain allocable to non-hot assets, and the difference being the 7,500, I believe that is. Yeah. Excuse me. In this case, this allocation, instead of increasing the assets, we're going to be decreasing the other property with unrealized depreciation. That would be the first thing we would do. So how we adjusted the basis up here is we allocated first essentially we recognized any unrealized appreciation, so the stock or the land. In a scenario where we have to reduce the assets, so let me get my formatting set up here. This is going to be the same again throughout. In a scenario where we are reducing non-hot assets, we would recognize essentially any sort of unrealized depreciation. So if these values had gone down. In our example here, that's obviously not the case. The investment and the land has gone up. So initially, or adjusted basis, is still going to be what we have, the 2,500 and the 10,000. So her basis is still 18,500. So we still, and then her partnership interest was 11,000. So we still have to allocate that 7,500, and we allocate it in a similar manner that we did up here. We're going to allocate based off of the relative, fair values, I should say. My apologies. There. So I'm going to allocate it based off of, I'm just looking at my notes here. So in this case, we're going to allocate not so much on the fair value, but we're going to allocate based off of their adjusted basis. If we're reducing, we don't want to reduce below their adjusted basis, because if we use fair value, we use that to prorate and reduce, we would actually get negative values, especially for that stock investment. So in this case, when we are reducing non-hot assets through allocable basis, we are going to utilize the adjusted basis instead of the fair market value. So how that would look, bear with me as I get through this. We are still trying to allocate this 7,500 to the 2 before we allocate that allocable gain. The stock investment had a basis of 2,500. The land had basis of 10,000. So we are going to allocate based off of these proportions. So I believe that's, the stock makes up 20% of that. The land makes up the other 80%. So a 20-80, so a 1-to-4 proration there. And we're allocating the 7,500. So how we do that, the formula already picked it up, but I want to show it. For the stock investment of that 7,500 that we're going to allocate to it, we simply divide its adjusted basis by the total basis, multiply it by the 7,500. So we're going to allocate 1,500 of that, and it's going to reduce the adjusted basis of the stock from 2,500. We allocate to it a negative 1,500. So its final basis, or Melissa's final basis in this example, will be 1,000. And then for the land, allocable base or adjusted basis of 10,000 divided by the total, and that should be adjusted basis, not fair market value, of 12,500, and we multiply that by the amount that we're trying to allocate, the 7,500. So 6,000 is allocated to the land. So its final basis is going to be reduced to 4,000. And again, you can confirm that because once you sum that up, final basis in the asset matches her partnership interests at the time of distribution. So again,
Quick question. If you said if the fair market value, if it depreciated, you would use the fair market value.
if it's depreciated, then we would use then we would use that amount.
Okay.
Other questions, other comments there? And then part D, they don't, Opto doesn't recognize any gain or loss. And that's normally the case.
So if the asset had depreciated, we would take out that depreciation first, and then we would allocate it based upon you would use that allocate remaining basis, and we would reduce it further by its portion of whatever it needed to be reduced further by.
Exactly.
Okay.
So if this, again, let's suspend disbelief here. If this land was depreciated, we would reduce the land first to that net book value amount first. And then if there's still any basis left to be allocated, like you said, then we would use the adjusted basis.
Okay. Is there any intuitive sense as to why the adjusted basis is used for the proportion as opposed to the fair market value? Because isn't the fair market value just determining a proportion as opposed to, you're not going to get it to zero, but
If we use fair market value, so everyone, this is the correct answer, but I'm going to change it back to fair market value. If I use fair market value, I don't know what the logic is for the difference between the two, other than I would assume they're using adjusted basis because it's closer to, because we know it's decreasing in value and most assets appreciate. Maybe that's the logic for it. I'm not 100% sure.
okay. No, that's all right. And that's why the book puts it as AB for, I'm guessing, adjusted basis as opposed to fair market value. So it was a proportion. So I was just confusing as to why you didn't use fair market value, because you're not going to be able to reduce it past zero. And it
Right.
still came out with 11,000 as like the total. It's just a different proportion.
Correct. And I think it might be that scenario you brought up. If the value depreciated and then we apportion it, maybe you could get to zero at that point.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you went with it. Yeah. Other questions? Other comments there? Questions? Again, this is your chance. So any insight? You want to know what's on the exam? Specifically, which question? No, I don't even remember off the top of my head, so I can't answer that.
Will you be sending something out like you did last exam, just kind of walking us through at least what we should study or focus on specifically?
Yeah, I'll give you some sort of like study guide and recommendations, that sort of thing.
Sweet, thank you.
Could you release a couple answers just to problems so that we have them to redo? I'd like to do. I'm sorry. No, not to the exam, just to additional questions in the book, because I have the class stuff. I just like to use a couple different ones.
For sure, I will.
Okay. Thank you.
Hopefully, I don't slip up and give you exam answers, but.
Or you could just do that. I think we'd all be okay with that as well.
I mean, it'll make my job easier to grade the exams, so maybe I will. We'll see. No. Other questions? Other comments? What's going on here? I believe we were promised crazy kiddo. It sounds like they're crazy right now. I don't know what they're doing. I'm afraid to bring them up here, Amanda. So my apologies on that. I do fear them. They keep me awake at night. So, any other questions? Any other comments? I think this is my last class actually teaching. I know I have a class tomorrow night, but I'm not doing anything. I'm watching a presentation. Joe knows that. So I thank you all for showing up and participating, and you've been doing it all semester long. So thank you for that. Yeah, I'll still teach. I have a couple of asynchronous classes in the next year. But yeah, I don't know when I'll teach an actual class again. It might be never. I don't know. We'll see. So it's kind of, it kind of dawned on me this morning about that. And this has been my career for 9 years, and it's kind of weird to not being doing this full time going forward. So I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'm really done with this semester. I'm done with live teaching, I guess, for who knows how long. But I'm excited. Like I said before, I'm excited for my new venture. I've already released a couple episodes and working on a few more, and it's interesting. And I get to research a lot of accounting that I've never heard of before or been able to get more in depth in. So I've enjoyed that part so far. And hopefully, once you all are CPAs, you will purchase the app or the platform, and then you'll get to hear me again for as long as you want to keep your CPA license active, I guess. So hopefully that's the case. So any comments, any questions before we sign off for the semester, I guess?
Thanks for teaching us.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Omar.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate it, everyone. Oh, you don't have to do that. I appreciate it. Well, that's it, I guess. So everyone have a good day. I'll post some material or announcements regarding the exam. It'll go live this Sunday, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But other than that, everyone have a good semester. Good luck with your exams. Good luck going forward. And again, thank you so much for participating and showing up in these difficult times. I really appreciate it. And again, good luck to everyone. Stay in touch. If you ever have questions in regards to, what classes to take, what, career path, any advice you need, do not hesitate to reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn. I think I'm connected to a lot of you. I'm easy to find on there. There's not too many Omar Rubies that are teaching at UC Denver. So feel free to connect with me on there. But yeah, other than that, everyone have a good day and good luck with the exam.
Good luck with your move. Thanks.
Yeah,
Yep.
good luck. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Good luck.
Thank you, Omar.
Thank you.